Happy Monday, sixth grade. This is Mrs. Smallwood welcoming you to another week of Learn from Home. I am in the process of getting us set up in a Google Classroom, which is similar but a little bit different than what you've been doing with Miss Majdi for math in Seesaw. So we'll have a place where all of these videos and your lesson plan and all of the documents that you need, you'll be able to find those there. And then in addition to that, I'll have a forum for being able to ask you questions so I can check for your understanding as you're reading. It's also a much easier way for you to be in touch with me by taking a picture of your work and submitting it, although you're welcome to do that anytime, even now, before it's set up. Remember that my email address is lsmallwood@mylegacyschool.com. So look for another email from me, and I did send something to your parents to ask all of them to send me your Gmail account. So if I haven't heard from them yet, or maybe they don't know what your Gmail account is, you could tell them and make sure that I get that sometime today, Monday, as I continue to get that set up, and hopefully we'll be up and running soon. As you get started on your week today, you'll of course be launching into a new week of spelling words. So that's lesson 27. You'll want to do all the words. Hold on just a sec. I can, but Mama's doing a lesson right now. You want to say hi?
Yep.
Okay, Oliver's going to say hi. Can you say hi?
I hear I'm in.
Okay.
In the middle.
I'm going to finish this, bud, and then I'll come help you.
Hi.
So as you continue in with week 3, you'll be doing spelling list 27, and those are Latin-derived suffixes ty and ity. So you'll see words like certainty, authority, activity, necessity, possibility. Today, your only job is page 106, which is just organizing the words by pattern, looking particularly at their suffix, how the word ends, and then sorting them that way. And again, if you have any questions, let me know. We'll do the test the same way we did last week, with me reading you the words on a video, and then you grading those yourself. And then by the end of this week, we'll be set up on the Google Classroom, so you'll just snap a pic of that and send it to me. In writing and grammar, today is the chapter 13 review. So you're going to be doing a little bit of all of the stuff that you've been doing for the last 2 weeks. So there's a little bit on adjectives, a little bit on adverbs, articles, thinking about prepositional phrases and confusing words. And so as you're doing that, try to pay attention to what is easy for you and maybe what's more difficult. And remember that because it's a review, all of the things that you've done this week can help you. You can flip back through and look at those again. Sorry for my little photo bomber. And then finally, in your literature books, honey, you have to let Mama finish. In your literature books, maybe he'll sit on my lap. We're going to look at what it means to have a theme in a story. So a few examples you could think about is sort of how stories can communicate truth. And I think that we know this. A lot of times if you go to church and you listen to a sermon, you might be able to quote back the verses or the main points, but a lot of times you can really remember either the Bible stories or the story that the pastor shares about themselves. And Jesus knew this, right? It was his primary way to communicate truth was through stories. Sorry. I want you guys to quickly listen to this story as we begin our unit on theme. A sick deer lay in a nook on the ground. His animal friends came in flocks to ask how he felt. And each of the animals, as they were checking on their friend, took a share of the food that had been left there for him to eat. So that eventually he died, not because of his health or because he was sick, but because he lacked the food he needed to live. And so if we were in class together, I would stop now and ask you, why do you think I told that story, and what do you think the meaning behind the story is? This is actually a shortened version of one of Aesop's fables. And at the end of the fable, Aesop would tell you the moral or the meaning of the fable.
It's a vacuum.
And so in this case, the meaning of the fable is that bad friends bring more harm than good. But I want you to imagine for a minute that, two things can happen. One is I could just look at you and say, hey, student, you need to remember that bad friends bring more harm than they do good. Or I could tell you this story about a deer who was sick and ultimately died, but not because he was sick, but because his bad friends took all the food that he needed to eat. We're more likely to remember a message when it comes to us through the form of a story. And so today we're going to think about themes, how authors communicate messages in stories. And a lot of times they weave this theme throughout their story so that they can communicate some bigger point. You're going to have this introduction to your literature lesson on pages 492 through 494, which will explain to you a little bit more about the concept of theme. And then once you've done that, you have 3 pages in your work text to complete. The first page, I wanted to point out that some of those stories are stories that, according to the lesson plan, you would have done with Miss B before I arrived. So if you need a refresher, you can flip back in your book. If you're not sure, do feel free to skip on this page if you were absent when that story was read or you don't know. That's 191. But 192, you should be able to do in its entirety. It's partly about vocabulary and partly about finding theme in a scripture passage. And then 193 is based on a story, Feathers in the Wind, that we all, I read aloud to us, about a boy who goes and lives with his grandfather on an Indian reservation after his parents pass away. So what they're asking you to do is review the plot. They do that on the top in this grid. And then you're going to think about what the theme is and how you can discern that from the major plot points. If you have any questions while you're doing this or you want to check in, do feel free to email me. And I look forward to being in touch and seeing you guys on Google Classroom real soon. Take care.